What is up, everybody? This is going to be a follow-up interview with Frozen Tundra. Say hi, Frozen.
Hello.
All right. So, and this is a picture of him. He's from Wisconsin. He's got a cheese head and he's a polar bear. And he
This is
trades
true.
stonks. For those of you who have not seen the original interview, here is the video. This was from December 5th. It is now March 26th. I want to talk about your edge because we did talk about it in that video. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when did you find this edge? What month was it that you started to find?
Yeah, I started researching this particular setup and set of edges during the summertime of 2021, and I started trading this setup on September 1st of 2021. And so the edge has become more and more apparent to me as I've been trading it since that September 1st
And
date.
it's still working, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it
What's your
still
win
works.
rate on it? I know you got a high win rate.
Let's see. For March so far, I have a 60.7% win rate, and then let me pull up year to date, 60.4%.
So that's pretty fucking good if you ask me. So it's been working, and it's been working in different conditions. Now,
Yeah,
in these different conditions, have you had to make adjustments, or is it pretty cut and dry?
it is not cut and dry whatsoever. I have to make a lot of adjustments, and it's tough to know what adjustments you should make, how much, like to what degree you should make adjustments, and whether or not the adjustments you're making are even legitimate, valid, justifiable, reasonable adjustments. That's a really tricky part. I'm hoping we can talk about, like, dig into all the meat of that because having an edge and being able to define it is, I think, one of the most important parts to get from that stage where you're somewhat consistent. You're either like 50-50 or slightly losing money or, barely breaking even. From getting there to just like consistently making money and going into the day knowing that you have an edge, going into the day knowing that over time you will be profitable. There's such a that's a step, that's a leap, and hopefully we can cover all the topics of how to get there in this
Yeah,
video
let's
and how
do
to
that
develop that.
actually. Let's talk since we're here. Let's talk about it because I think one of the hardest parts of trading is adjustments for the different
Mm.
conditions. Because you've gone, you said from September, so you've gone from relatively low volatility markets, I assume, because the ES was more low volatility then, and the ES, and that's all I trade, right? The ES has gone to very high volatility, especially with the invasion of Ukraine. And as it got below the 200-day moving average, it got more volatile. Does when the ES is getting very volatile? Let me ask you this, because I don't trade stonks. Does that affect your markets when the ES is getting more volatile, or not really?
I think so. I do watch the ES now. I did subscribe to some futures data. I do watch the ES. I'm not tracking the volatility of the ES compared to what's happening, but of course, if the indices are moving wider and are more volatile, it is going to affect the underlyings and the components of those indices. And I play a lot of large cap stocks. I'm not really playing any of the small cap names. I guess that's actually part of my edge is stock picking and knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And um, the names that I play with are very market correlated, I guess you could say. And so yes,
Are that
the
so?
volatility
Are you
would affect them.
picking? Are you picking? When you pick your stocks, are you picking it to where they're trading roughly, sort of that same? How can I put it? Conditions. You know what I'm saying? Are you trying to
Like,
find
are they the similar character? Are they similar characteristics? Are they all of one family, so to speak?
not necessarily family, but like the movements of them, the relative volatility of them, the thickness of the book? Are you
Yeah,
looking
that
for specific trading conditions when you're picking your stocks?
I definitely am. I definitely am. And I think what's more important than even picking the correct trading conditions is knowing when to sit out on the sidelines when the conditions aren't in your favor. The action of not taking a trade is a trade in itself, and that has become really apparent in my trading and analyzing my performance. Some of the days where I just sit on my hands because nothing has set up, or there's a bunch of subpar setups, or just nothing screaming like you need to get in here and put risk on. Sitting out those days has been really, really good for my trading. And if you had talked to me a year ago, I would have said to you, I want to be in there pulling the trigger every single day. I want to have multiple trades a day. I want to be in, out. I want to be this. I want to be that. Well, none of that led to consistent profitability, but having that edge of knowing what stocks to be in on what days and knowing even more so when not to be in them, that has really contributed to my recent success.
So how do you figure that shit out? Like, how do you know? And I guess this would go into defining your edge, right?
It would, yeah. Yeah.
How do you know, like, when you should sit? Is it a feel thing for you? Is it like that's
Um, that's a really good question. And I think in the overall conversation, since we're gonna talk about edge here, I think each piece of my edge, I think there's different faces to it, and each face of my edge has different nuances to it. So if we look at just the stock picking face and we look at the different nuances of it, I trade Apple, or at least I look at Apple and Nvidia and Tesla and some of these other, really popular market stocks. I look at these on a daily basis, but I don't trade Apple every single day. If the order flow on Apple does not look the way I need it to in the pre-market or on the open, I'll probably stay away from Apple on that day. If the overall context of what's happening in Apple doesn't match up with what the market regime or market environment or narrative is, I'm probably going to stay away from it that day. If Apple had fresh news and a market move in pre-market that correlated with that fresh news, either to the upside or to the downside, and there was good volume and there appeared to be institutional involvement in the name on that day in pre-market, then I probably will be looking at it. So there's so many nuances to each part of the edge. And I think for folks who are trying to find and develop an edge, which I hope is something we can dig into here as well,
go
if you're
for it?
not able to if you're not able to define your edge, like if I ask you, tell me what your edge is, and you are not able to list out all the faces of that edge and the various nuances and what you're going to do in each of those cases and go through very excruciatingly detailed
Yeah,
uh,
so if you ask me that, I would probably sit here for hours explaining.
exactly. And I've been on your live stream, and when you talk about it, you say things. I'm paraphrasing here, but you say things like, "I'm not going to take this because it's too close to this or it's too far away from this." And I've seen this before when it does this. You have all these nuances stored that you've seen. I mean, part of it is seat time. Part of it is being wrong over and over again and having that pain be registered within you until the point where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again when I see those conditions. And you need to really, really identify those. And if you haven't done that yet, then you need to start digging and researching and defining those edges, or sorry, the nuances on those edges.
So, do you think it's a load of shit when somebody's like, you should be able to explain your edge in like 30 seconds? You think that's a load of shit?
30 seconds or three?
30 seconds. Like, some people
Mm,
think you should. I've seen it out there, like on FinTwit or something. They think you should, if you have a good trading edge, you should be able to quickly explain it in 30 seconds or something. Do you think that's a load of shit? Because I do.
I don't know about the timing component. So as an engineer, if I explain it in 29 and a half seconds versus 30 and a half seconds, if I'm half a second over or under, does that invalidate my edge? So I can't speak to the timing component of
I
it.
think
What I
there's
can say,
different components to Edge too. Keep
oh
in
yeah,
mind, I don't
yeah,
think it's not just the setup. The setup has a lot to do with it, but I know
yeah,
you.
and the setup isn't even the edge. That's the other thing. The setup isn't the edge. The edge is understanding your approach and what you are taking advantage of to give you that edge. There's you're taking advantage of something, some kind of inefficiency. And what is that? And what are the nuances of that? And how does it work? How does it work mechanically? How does it function? How are other market participants reacting to that series of events or whatever the edge is? Um, then your setup is just taking advantage of that. But the edge itself is not the setup. The setup is just the setup.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this. I feel the setup is definitely an important component, right?
For you, it is? Okay.
I'm asking you, like, because you're not just trading any random fucking area.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, they're interrelated, but I would say that um, your edge, first of all, it can't be ambiguous. You can't say something like, and I'm gonna get some hate on this, I think, but 20 years ago, it was popular to, it probably still is today, I'm not even sure, but if you see the stock dip down to the 20 SMA on the daily, that's a good place to buy. And if that's the extent of someone's edge, and that's also their setup, I just I'm gonna have a hard time believing that they're having a lot of success in all market conditions in 2022. That's a hard thing to
Now,
swallow.
well, and I agree with you. But if you take that 20-day moving average and you kind of figure out, you add tape reading to it, because I know you're a tape reader as well, and then you add other components to it, and then you learn the nuances of it. You know when to trade it, when not to trade it. You know which stocks, I guess, to use it in.
Hmm.
I guess, would you say that's where the edge comes in? Just really
Exactly.
learning it and learning when not
Exactly.
to approach it.
Yeah, so you listed off a couple different things there, and all of those things, I believe, are part of the edge. Those are the different faces of the edge. The fact that you know that you said,
Edge
which
isn't one
stocks to
thing.
participate,
Edge
it
is
is not
not
one
one
thing.
thing. It's several different
Correct.
things.
Correct. I believe a true edge is several different things. And I really did not understand that for a long, long time. And I understand it a lot better now and I think it's one of the most important things to, again, get past that. This trade worked, this trade didn't work, and I'm just floundering and barely keeping my head above water, or I'm not keeping my head above water and I'm just slowly bleeding off my account from getting to that point to the next step of being like, okay, I am proving that I'm consistently profitable now. You have to really understand your edge and exploit it. And you can't have an edge that others um, who are profitable can easily tear a hole into. For example, let's take if your edge was only, I'm just beating up on this, by the dip onto the 20 moving average. What happens if the stock had actually started a downtrend and it went from the 20 and dropped down to the 50 that was underneath it? What then? Like, what are you going to do then? Um, what if the entire market is in a negative sentiment and you're still going to buy that 20, that dip to the 20 moving average on the daily? What if some crazy news event comes out and everything starts just falling off the face of the earth? Are you also going to buy that 20? Like there are nuances to this that you have to have within your edge.
I think
Now, if
one
you
thing
came in,
you and I both
yeah, go
agree
ahead.
on is context when it comes to that. For instance, I think the 20-day moving average is a great example because it's like everybody knows what that is.
Right.
With the 20-day moving average, how did the market trade before that? How is it reacting? What has it tested? What has it not tested? And for me, I would be building a story around that. The price action before it gets to the 20-day moving average. I think having context and having a story of what is happening, what is going on before it even gets there, I think is part of the edge. Not just blindly, here's the 20-day moving average, let's put the fucking trade on. Context. And I know you're
Exactly.
huge on context. Can
Very.
you maybe go into a little more in depth on what to you might be context?
Yeah, yeah, and I want to make clear I'm not trying to beat up on the moving averages. I don't use moving averages or VWAP for my trading in a major way. I know a lot of people do, and there's people who use it with Edge consistently, but they have a very mature, developed set of rules and criteria that need to be um, achieved in order to put those trades on. That's different than just saying I'm buying any dip to the 20. Those are two different things. So when we talk about what is oh, got an infant waking up here. When we talk about what
Context.
is context, for me, it has to do with macro sentiment. So we have a war going on in Ukraine right now, or special operation, depending on.
So the fundamentals are making it trade differently.
So yeah, like how is that affecting things? Is it affecting it the same on day 20 or 30 as it was on day 1 or 2? Market appears to have brushed that off, that fundamental news off, and now the market is not really appearing to care about this fresh war situation. Um, that's a pretty large piece of context there. Um, Other pieces of context I'm trying to think of from the last week for some of the stocks that I've been trading. There's been kind of like this resurgence in some of the names that we saw in 2021. It was like meme stocks like GameStop and AMC and let's see, some of the crypto stocks started running, some of the weed stocks started running again the last couple of days. That is
So
context.
that's like bigger picture context. What about when you have context when you further zoom in, correct? Like
On the intraday as
because you're
well?
using the footprint setup, right? And we in our first interview you showed some examples.
Correct, yeah. And so before I even go to the intraday for what I'm trading, before I even get to the intraday, I'm looking at the higher time frames and I'm looking to see if things are setting up for me. So this is specific to my setup and the way I trade. I need to see the story on the higher time frames on the daily, and I need to see and understand that context. And is it going my direction? So, let's take energy, which was basically both the commodity and the energy stocks were just breaking out to the upside when the Ukraine situation happened. And the context there is that this is a geopolitical situation that just occurred that is going to create high demand in these energy names. So they are likely going to go up. That's the wider context and on the higher time frame. Now I zoom in onto the intraday and I look for first of all, stocks that will move the way I want them to move. I don't want an energy name that is so thick and the book is so thick that it moves only a few pennies a day. That's not the type of stock I prefer. I also don't want something that's so thin and not traded that it has a 2 point spread and it bops around like crazy and it's not tradable. So there's a sweet spot for me and I have to know what stocks fall into that and what stocks don't. And then I look into those specific stocks and I
I
look
want to.
at,
I just want
yeah,
to
go ahead.
real quick. The sweet spot. It's funny you mentioned that because I just did a video on sweet spots. It's the video before this one, but it's not published just yet. But anyways,
Oh, okay. Well, go watch that,
yeah,
those of you who are listening, because
S-
they'll probably be
that's
published by the time this is.
yeah, that's coming before this one. Well, obviously it's over with at this point, but that sweet spot. I like how you mentioned that shit. Anyways, sorry to interrupt.
No, no, it's really important. And again,
Yes.
that's part of my edge. I know that I don't want to be trading super, super thick or super, super thin names because that is not where my edge is. My edge is in my sweet spot of names. And so I was looking for those energy names, and my infant here is telling me this is all BS what I'm saying. What's up, buddy? So yeah, I find those stocks and then I zoom in onto the intraday, and what I'm really trying to see is, for me, part of my edge is because I know how institutions put orders on and off their books and I know how they run their orders. So understanding the nuances of that and how that is accomplished, the mechanics of how those institutions are putting on very large, I'm not talking about 1,000 shares. I'm talking like go buy 1 million shares of XYZ, go buy $10 million worth of, ABC, whatever. Those are large orders. And when they need to put them on quickly, especially when there's like a geopolitical event that was unexpected, that leaves traces. That leaves traces. And that's where I want to get involved. I see those, the wider, higher time frame context lines up. I see the institutions, they can't hide because they're too big, and they need to move this order on or off their books. Okay. And that's when I zoom in on the intraday and start looking at the footprint, following the tape, trying to identify who these institutional players are and what they're trying to do. And that's how I take advantage and exploit my set of edges.
And that was good context. And one thing that I think is very important, I constantly preach it, and I think it's interesting you do it as well, is, and I want to shift a little bit, is tape reading. You're an order flow guy too, and
Yeah,
you've been doing it for a while, correct?
correct.
With that being said, how important is that component? Because some people, and it's difficult. Like, it for some reason, order flow is just not as cut and dry as the setup. But then again,
No.
all that context you listed for the actual setup isn't cut and dry either. I think a lot of people maybe watch YouTube videos and they look at a setup for a setup, but it's really not just like in your
Yeah,
face like that. There's so much going into it beforehand. And the
yeah,
problem with order flow is it's these numbers are moving all the time. So unless you have recorded footage like I might do on my channel, you won't be able to, I guess, I can't really show you examples without a recording and how it aligns and meshes with setups. So how important to you is order flow, the tape reading, uh, and like why is it important to you?
super important. And I feel like we could have two follow-up interviews just talking about tape reading and still not exhaust the topic. So yeah, I'm a tape reader. I've been doing it since probably 2006, I'd say. And the tape nowadays in 2022 is significantly, some things still remain the same. And in terms of putting orders on, what I'm looking for in the tape and in the order flow is the presence of a willing and able buyer and seller of institutional size that has no choice but to move size. I just said a lot of things there, but and maybe the viewers can go back and rewind, or I'll try to say it again slower now. What
Okay.
I'm looking for before I enter a trade is I'm trying to find an institutional trader who I can see on the tape who is forced because of the wider context narrative and market sentiment and whatever the geopolitical situation is, if it's like we were just talking about energy, or maybe Apple released a new iPhone, or maybe Nvidia released a new whatever graphics card, or whatever the industry is, it doesn't matter. Um, I'm trying to find institutional traders who are forced to move size on those names, and by watching the tape, I can pick up and see them. They can't hide when they have to be putting an order on or off. And the orders are so large, there's only a couple of ways they can do that. There's only a couple ways they can try to like get that order on or off the book. Sometimes they're sloppy, sometimes they're less sloppy, but overall, tape reading and understanding order flow helps me identify that yes, this name is a name, that there is an institution that is moving size in, and that is one of my criteria for even considering a stock to put risk on in a name.
Would you be able
If I
to
don't see,
trade your setup without tape? Would you be able to actually trade your setup without order flow, or would it make it?
I am not sure. I've never actually thought about that before. I'm not sure. I would feel blind to in a sense, because how would I be able to see and validate that my edge? I mean, part of my edge is that there isn't being able to see the tape and the presence of an institutional trader moving size. That is part of my edge. So if I didn't have that, I would have to rely a lot on some of the other parts of my edge. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll think about that one tonight.
I would probably
Um,
say probably not.
One thing I
I
will
would
say,
say I would say your trading wouldn't be as precision without
no,
it, right?
no, it wouldn't be. And that I'm glad you said that because it leads me into the next point, which is I use tape reading significantly for my exits. Significantly for my exits. I'm using um, tape reading and order flow to identify when a potential institutional buyer or seller has finished off their order. The way a sloppy seller finishes their order is very. Actually, I have videos of this on my channel. I do have a playlist called
Go
Tape
watch his
Reading.
channel, like and subscribe. And if you guys want to, and just real quick, if you guys want to connect more with Frozen, come to the Discord. He lives in my Discord. Link in the description to join that Discord.
Under
So
the bridge
you go over your setups.
in a van.
Yeah, he lives under the bridge, and no, he definitely doesn't live under the bridge there. He's on all the time. And you go over your setups often in there, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really only have one setup, and I've been trading only one setup since September 1st, 2021, and it's the one that we're talking about here.
So
And
and that's the thing. We're not gonna go over, like in the first video. We're not gonna go over all these screenshots of your specific setup.
no.
If you want to know more, go there.
I have videos on it. I made a video
And-
about how the setup works. I go into detail. I show, pictures and screenshots. So if you want to find that out. But what I wanted
On
to
your
say is,
YouTube, and just real quick.
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
YouTube. Anyways, go ahead.
yeah, I'm excited about this because I do have a couple of recordings there of what different tape situations are, or what different situations look like on the tape. I'm don't have any of them up in front of me right now, but going off of memory, I think there's a couple of them where sellers were finishing their order, and you can see in these recordings just the sloppy, just huge amount of selling that comes into these names at the end of the order when they're just like, okay, get it off the books. I want to go to lunch. I'm hungry. I'm an institutional trader. It's lunchtime. I have, 200,000 shares to go, 500,000 shares to go out of a 10 million share order, and I'm just going to dump it recklessly, not hitting the bid for all 200 or 500,000 shares, but for most of it, and I'm just going to destroy the price of the stock because it doesn't have the liquidity to support this huge order. So, yeah, there's some good content there, but that's how tape reading helps me get exits. When I see the institutional seller finishing their order, there's not much reason for me to be in there after they're gone.
Also, trading isn't. It's not like this edge just falls in your lap. This is and I always say this is a skill-based game, and it takes time. It takes time to get good at this. And I always reference sports. Would you agree that you just can't... There's just nothing out there where somebody is going to find somebody else's edge and just trade it. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I don't believe in how do I say it? I've shared my setup publicly. It's on my YouTube channel. I talk about it every single day in your Discord. I am not afraid of that edge going away because I can give someone a profitable trading strategy and the edge, but they won't have the components to execute on it, even if they had all the same experience and everything else. You, the listener, have a different risk profile than I do. You have a different set of experiences. You have a different set of weaknesses and a different set of strengths than I do.
And your mental framework is different. I think mental framework is huge. And I agree with you because I share my stuff all the time with other traders, and nobody's going to fucking take it, especially in the ES. It's such a thick fucking market.
Well, also, it's not going to work for them because you, the listener listening right now, who's trying to find an edge, you need to find your edge, not someone else's edge. You need to find your edge because someone else's edge is not going to work for you. That key will not fit into that keyhole. You need to figure out your own way.
I do think as a brand new trader, I do think you should model other traders
and get ideas.
as best as you can, and just kind of like browse around and model other traders. And then, and this is how it worked for me. I started taking little things that really made sense from all these other different traders, and I made my own style. And my own style is very unique to me, but there's certain things from other people that have influenced it. But every great trader, and I'm not a fucking great trader by any means, like as far as these legends go, traders that are really serious about this, I mean, they're all unique. They're all doing.
Yeah.
Because you came into the futures room, use profiles or something of that nature, footprint, or do something that you just weren't seeing in the equities world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's interesting. You came over here to do something completely unique and different.
Yeah, yeah. And the irony is that my edge that I've found in the setup that I'm trading is this is really funny actually. The toughest thing and the worst performing setup that I had ever traded over the entire history of my trading was buying pullbacks and selling pops on trending names. I sucked at buying pullbacks. It seems like such a simple thing. Like you see a stock breakout, you buy the pullback, you know, you're sitting on the beach with your Corona and you're making money, close your laptop and you have bikini clad girls dancing around you. Obviously that's not how it works. And every time I tried to buy a pullback, I just got ran over and maybe it worked 10, 20, 30% of the time, but most of the time when I was buying pullbacks, or shorting pops, it just wasn't working for whatever reason. And this setup that I've been trading since September of 21, it's actually buying pullbacks and selling pops, but it has so much other components and criteria in it that are defined by my edge that now it's actually my main bread and butter. I mean, this is what I do every single day, day in and day out, is I'm just buying pullbacks and selling pops. And this is something that I struggled the most with. So it's ironic that the thing that I struggled the most with has become my main bread and butter.
One thing that's interesting is you and I have talked a lot because you have struggled with this setup, not in the sense of making it actually work for you, but getting all your size in. Do you want?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to talk about what we did and how? Because you and I had several conversations about, and I don't trade stonks, I don't trade your setup, but I did help you in the sense that let's try this or that as far as what would it be, strategy maybe.
Execution
Yeah.
and yeah, strategy and execution, I'd say. Yeah, I've
What was
definitely
the
struggled.
issue? So what was it? If you don't mind sharing, what was the issue you were having with getting full fills? And
Sure.
then
So
also your daily loss limit, and you've made fine adjustments there, and things
yeah,
seem to be working out.
yeah, that's a good segue into how to adjust and how to know you're making the correct adjustments. So when I first started trading this back in September of 21, my entries were based off of these levels that I was identifying, and I had actually staggered my entries so that I had multiple entries. And what was happening was that I was only getting filled on my first entry, like 80 something percent of the time, and my second entry, which I had more size, I was only getting filled 25% of the time or less. In other words, my winners, which I would get filled on that first entry, were on partial size, pretty small size, but my losers were always on full size because it would go fill my scaled entry and then stop me out. And so I was taking oversized losses and undersized wins. And you and I spoke, it must have been a couple months ago, and we discussed, well, what would happen if I just took full size and only did one entry and kind of
Fill
tried
the whole
that
thing.
approach. Yeah, fill the whole thing and see what would happen with that approach. And that was one of the best adjustments that I had actually made because I am getting filled on full size now. My win percentage is high enough and my risk reward is um, good enough that now I'm getting really great runs on my full size, and my stop outs are less frequent than my wins.
And that's
So
that's something I noticed, and from my perspective, and tell me if I'm wrong. You were you were setting it up to get like you were cutting the trade up into three
two or
entries.
three parts, yeah,
Yes.
2 or 3 entries. Yep.
So you would cut the trade up in originally to get filled
Hmm.
in three different spots. Well, I was asking you, how often are you getting filled on the first clip? And how often is that working? And most of the
Right.
time, the first clip was getting filled and it was working. Most of the
Correct.
time.
Correct.
It's when he got filled on the first clip and then it went through it and then it would start filling the other ones all the way into the stop. Well, so
Right.
I'm like thinking, okay, well, let's see what happens if we can just fill more size. At first, I suggested maybe 2/3 on the first fill,
Hmm.
and then you started doing that and it started working. I know you made that adjustment, and so now you're doing a full fill on the first clip, right?
Correct. No more scaling, and that has been a really welcomed change. Seeing a really good, uh, it just makes more sense for me and for what I'm trying to do. I get filled on my full size right away at the level, at the prices I want. I'm fighting for better prices as well because of that. So often I'm getting even better prices. And if you join Fat Cat's Discord, I post the entries and exits for my trades, and you can see some of these entries are just surgical. So I'm really fighting for the best prices, getting all my size on, and the win percentage and the follow through to my first profit target is happening a lot. So it's really nice to see those minor adjustments happen. Notice what I didn't adjust. I didn't go and throw an entire strategy out the window because it wasn't quite working perfectly. I was looking at what was not working, what components weren't working, talking with other experienced traders, trying to figure out what things we could tweak that wouldn't undermine the entire thesis of the trade because the thesis of the trade was still accurate. It
I
was just my execution of it that was not aligned with reality.
I also do want to say that there were times where you really were doubting it, and there was times where you were scared that this would go away completely. Like you're
Yeah, yeah,
that. And here's the thing, and I think this is very important. This is why you need to talk to other fucking traders, and I'm
yep,
talking about really engaging with other traders. And you can't just talk to random people. You need to get to know other traders over time. Like you just can't come into a trading room, write something up, and expect to get all
a
this
huge
support.
investment of time from
Yes.
experienced traders.
So putting in the time to cultivate relationships with other traders is fucking huge. Because Frozen was he was doubting himself on these setups, but when he ran the stats by me, it made sense. And from my perspective, I was well shit. I was believing in you more than you were believing in yourself at certain times, and plenty of fucking pep talks. And I think that's
Yeah,
very important to have somebody else to lean on to just tell them how you feel. I think a
yeah,
lot of traders come
absolutely.
into this with this huge ego, and they're afraid to be what open
Wrong.
and yeah, well, to be open with other traders and be like, hey man, I'm fucking having problems with this. This is
Right.
right. Um,
Yeah,
but
better learn how to deal with that, guys. That's not gonna work in the long run.
and you're gonna get more help because I feel more people want to help, especially if they see somebody struggling, than somebody who's like flexing all the time. Um,
Yeah,
Another problem we started to have, and I know you're working on it, is running the trade further to target
correct.
because you
Yeah,
were cutting them too soon.
I was cutting them too soon and not sitting on my size to target, and it was really a problem of my own invention. I was just getting in my own way, and the 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 thing that really helped me was just a discussion with you where we looked at all the stats and we looked at the entries and some of my exits, and again, I looked over my thesis, and the thesis is still valid. The trade edge is still there. The setup is still valid, and it does come to hit that first target most of the time. So the fact that I was cutting most of my size off before that first target was just due to my emotional state of being and being worried about it being, turning into a loser or not working around, not working out, I should say. And after sleeping on it and talking to you and over multiple sessions and putting some notes to myself to encourage myself to just take that size to that first target at least, and then you can start putting some profits out from that point. And what a difference that has made. So really excited to do that because that's just that's like a, what do they call it in tennis? A self.
You're asking the wrong guy. This is you're
You're
gonna
not a
have to.
tennis guy? Oh,
No.
you got the golf visor on. You got the golf visor on.
I don't. I
Tennis
don't know
golf.
anything about golf. This is a poker visor, and I don't know anything about poker either.
Oh, it's a poker visor. Okay,
Yeah,
so you don't.
it's for my online character.
Mm-mm.
It's my online avatar. Um,
Unforced error. That's what I'm trying to think of. It was really an unforced execution error on my part because in my trading setup, in my own rules that I have very well defined, um, the the first profit target is there because it's the first profit target, and there's very few situations where I should be taking any profit before that first profit target. And the fact that I was getting most of my size off before I even hit that first profit target was just me doing an unforced error, just like in tennis when you
how
make a mistake and shoot the ball into the net, and it was not your opponent doing it; it was you to yourself.
how important is seat time? And I'm asking this because when you came into the room, you were struggling, and you had traded for a lot longer than I have, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, your shift into trading success, if you will, was pretty fucking dramatic. Um, but you came into this with a shitload of experience. And whether you were
Yeah,
profitable or not, that's still fucking experience, right? How important is seat time and just seeing this happen over and over to sort of make you a better trader, if you get what I'm saying? Like, if
I
you're.
do get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a substitute for seat time and being wrong. I don't know what the number of months or years that it would take for the average person to gain some level of competency in this and start breaking even or actually being consistently positive. But I have decades of seat time and of being both right and wrong. And it absolutely has played a part. The seat time tells you, you know what it probably does the most for me? It shows me situations that I just want to not be involved in. There's so many ways to trade the markets. There's so many ways to take your little sliver of the pie, and there's equally even more number of ways to lose money in the markets. And if you don't have that seat time and haven't been wrong, how are you possibly going to avoid all of the ways that are wrong for you? Like,
Would you say trading edge is also knowing what not to fucking do? Because that's how I
that's like the
feel.
majority of it. It's like the majority of it. And knowing my weaknesses and confronting them and avoiding them during the day and acknowledging them and really, really understanding who I am as a person, what my weaknesses are, and where my strengths are, that is an edge of mine. I know that I can't sit patiently through a stock that I have to sit through for an hour in, and it only moves one or 2 cents every 10 minutes. I can't do that. That is a weakness of mine, and so that's why I don't trade stocks like that.
Yeah, I would
That's
say
just
that.
that's a great example of it.
So for those of you guys out there that are frustrated with fucking up and failing all the time, hopefully you're learning from that, because the more you learn from failures. Well, actually, experience is what you get when you didn't get what you originally wanted, right? And the problem is, like, if you come into this and you're brand new and you're just winning all the time, that's not really good in the sense that when it goes wrong, you have no fucking idea why it's going wrong.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, people start in different market cycles and different regimes. If you're new to trading, if you're only a couple months in, honestly, if you're less than 2 years in, or even 2 years in, 3 years in, and you think you've got it figured out, I think you've got,
Oh, you got
maybe not in 100% of the time, but you've got something coming. Be careful if you think you've got it figured out, because the market, she will humble you.
you have to sit.
So
You have to sit through all the different condition shifts.
through the regime changes, yeah, you have
Because
to.
when there's an act of war or a pandemic, the market is going to trade fucking nuts, and you're not going to. If you never experienced that, you can't make the appropriate adjustments to even fucking handle that.
Right.
And if you've not traded trade till May, then go away. If you've not traded dog shit, slow summertime all time highs to where it's just flatlined,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get fucked up. You've got to experience it and see it for yourself. That's why
And
I tell people
go
it
through
takes
those
years.
mistakes.
It takes years. There's no fucking way. And correct me
No
if I'm
shortcut.
wrong, but there is no way you can do this in a year and maintain the consistency. Yes, you might be consistent for a month or two, but to continue to maintain it year after year, there's just no way.
I don't know
You
if I
need
can.
years.
There's at least 500 people on YouTube selling courses claiming that you can do it in 3 months and everything is easy. So
Well, they're
obviously
obviously full of shit.
we must be wrong,
Or we're
because
retarded because we didn't figure it out like that.
we're doing it the hard way. They've got the easy way. We just need to pay them $19,999 for their course, and it would have all been easy. So
There you go. So let me ask you this. We're at 48 minutes. Let's go a little bit longer. Trading Edge. How do you develop Trading Edge? I think we
how
covered
do you
a lot.
find it?
Yeah.
How do you find it?
Yeah.
For me, what happened was I had a prior set of edges that were not working, and I dug in and just started researching, looking at situations, whether they were news-based, event-based, technical-based, fundamental-based, looking at the places that I would like to be involved. So for me, I trade pullbacks on breakouts and breakdowns. And so I would look at those situations and I would examine just all of the different elements of those situations playing out. And some examples of that are: what does the higher time frame look like? What does the general market look like? What was the news of the day? What is the VIX at? What kind of volatility environment are we trading in? What is the current sector that has rotated in? For you futures guys, stocks rotate in and out of play based on their sector. The meme stocks, we talked about those earlier, GameStop and AMC and all those other meme stocks were really, really hot, and then they became not hot, and then it became pot stocks, and then it became crypto stocks. Back in the day, it was solar energy when that was first hitting, and sometimes it can be semiconductors. So I forgot what I was even talking about.
How do you find Edge?
Oh, how do I find it? Right.
Yeah. How did you how do you find Trading Edge? For me, it was experimenting with a shitload of stuff that I thought was repeating, and then over time, I have one setup that just keeps fucking working over and over, and I wouldn't say I accidentally stumbled upon it, but I sort of did. But I just kept fucking with it until I'm like, holy shit, this keeps working. And refining it and reviewing it, looking at it, examining it, You know what I mean?
It's an iterative process. I think you hit it there on the head. It's a process of iteration. You find something that you see that works, and then you study it, and then you're like, hey, it worked here too. Oh, it worked here third time, 10th time, 100th time, and you see something that keeps working over and over. Well, what are the nuances of it? What are the criteria of that? What does it take to provide the environment of that? Tornadoes only happen in certain weather environments. You need exactly the right conditions and temperatures and wind directions in order to make those happen. So you're trying to find your own tornado, if you will, and you need to know all the elements, all the pieces of the recipe that go into making one, so that you can take that little piece of time and exploit it and have profit from it. And it's very similar with Trading Edge. I would suggest people who want to trade identify or want to find an edge rather identify the time frame first that they want to be trading in, identify what their risk profile is. So time frame would be like, are you trying to hold for days, weeks, hours, minutes, seconds? You need to know which one of those playing fields you want to be involved in. And then from there, you have to go into what kind of trader do I want to be? Am I trying to fade moves back into the mean? Am I going to do like mean reversion type strategies? Do I prefer breakouts? Do you prefer momentum, or do you prefer coming back to the mean? There's different categories of those types of setups. I would choose something that speaks to you and makes you excited. You feel excited inside when you see this playing out, and you're like, hey, I see that. I recognize that. I can take advantage of that. I can exploit that. It makes sense to me. And then start figuring out why it's happening. How does it happen? When does it happen better? When does it happen worse? Start
You need a
not
lot of
being
sample
involved.
size, basically. You need
Yeah,
a lot of seat time with it.
you need yeah, you need more seat time. Exactly. And you need to be wrong a lot um, in order to know what not to do. You have to be able to identify things that you did wrong and cut them out. You have to be able to identify situations and criteria and environments
So
that
I do
don't
want to talk.
play to your strength.
I want to talk about that. This is what, because I you're looking at your trades, right? At
Yep,
the end of the day, I
yep.
think it's important that when you look at the trades, you start off with, say, like a stone, like a piece of marble or something, right? And you're chiseling off a bunch of bullshit. So you're cutting
Hmm.
off stuff that ain't working with it. At the same time, you're trying to make that stone look better, and you're trying to sculpt it into like a figure or something, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Hmm.
So how can
Yeah.
I make this better? What can I do to have made this better? How can I approach this better? And on the other end of the spectrum, what can I take away from this? What can I get rid of? So you're cutting shit off, but at the same time you're trying to make it better in specific ways. And
Yes. Yes.
that right there is you chiseling away at this stone and making your etch, if you will. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, that's a good analogy for it. And um, I think for me, a large portion of my success came from finding the things I need to stop doing or stop being involved in.
And
Um,
that's just real quick with that analogy. When you're cutting off that stone, it's called detritus. All that shit that's on the ground that you cut off is experience.
yeah,
So all the shit you just
from
took off
experience.
is
From experience, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and that's where the seat time, there's just no way to substitute it because without having really experienced that real time and feeling that pain, you don't know that that's the piece of the stone you need to chip away at and leave behind. One of those for me, just to put a real example in front of your viewers, when I see daily charts that are in a bunch of noise on the if you look left from the daily candle to and you see that we're just completely in a bunch of noise. There's no clear skies or ground. to the left, and it's just in a bunch of noise. I don't even trade those anymore. Even if the intraday setup looks just juicy, 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 and I really want to lay into it, and even if there's fundamental news, if that daily is just in a bunch of noise, I'm not taking that trade anymore. Why? Because experience has shown me, and I have chiseled away that part of the stone, and it's on the ground now. Experience has shown me that I'm just not profitable in those environments. I need clear skies or clear ground to the left on the daily chart in order to really exploit my edge.
One final question. And here's the thing. If any of you have noticed, we have not talked about P&L or money. So those of you that are brand new, I would say you're falling into a trap when people, that's all they're showing. Is this easy money? Is trading easy money like people think, Frozen?
Trading is the furthest thing away from easy money that there is. If you're, I mean, we're all doing it for the money, but if you're not passionately just wrapped up in this and thinking about it all the time,
And you gotta stop
think,
thinking about the money, right? You gotta stop thinking
yeah,
about the money, right?
yeah. I mean, at a certain point, once you get to a certain point, you are going to really your focus will be, in my opinion, should be on did I execute according to my plan and my process correctly, rather than hey, look, everybody on the chat room, this is how much money I made. Um, I care less about the P&L and whether or not I actually followed my plan. Like, for example, I have these, again, I said I put up some notes here after one of our last talks about holding my trades to target. If I got stopped out, but I was trying to hold my trade to target, and for some reason it just went and reversed on me and it stopped me out, I am completely okay with that right
And
now.
you gotta get
Why? Because I know I have
desensitized.
edge.
You gotta get desensitized to those losses too. You can't
Yeah,
let that
yeah,
shit fuck with you. And I think
yeah.
that's
It's hard to
experience.
do that. It's hard to do that. It is experience, I think. It's experience and just being aware that that is where you need to go, and you need to find a way to get your mental state there. There's really no substitute. You won't be able to operate and perform and execute your plan um, properly if you're constantly worried about the P&L. So
It's not easy money then.
it's not. It's not.
I mean, at
Not at
some
all.
point it gets easier, but it's never like easy. I don't think there's ever a point where trading is easy, but it definitely gets
Yeah,
easier
I
to
I
some
don't I
degree.
don't I really dislike when I see those YouTube videos of people saying, easy 1, 2, 3 setup, make $100 a day, like
Yeah.
whatever. That's all BS, guys. Guys, that's all BS. There is no easy money. Um, that setup may work during that video while that person's on demo, even though they're saying that they're live, but they're actually on demo. But it won't work in all market environments. There is no such thing as easy money. There is no free lunch on Wall Street.
All right, man. Well, I think that wraps it up right there. Um,
There's one more
yeah.
thing that I will say. I just pulled up more stats here. Since September 1st, I'm looking at the very beginning, since I placed my very first trade on this setup, up to yesterday, which was Friday, March 25th of 2022. I have an overall win rate of 59.5% and an overall risk reward of 1.3 to 1. It's not great, but that is since the very, very beginning. 59.5% and 1.3 to 1. And I am just trying to improve on that, get my win rate higher, and get my risk reward even higher as well. I'm going to try to break into the twos consistently over a period of months and
What when
hopefully
when you say
years.
two, you mean your risk to reward, 2 to 1? I'm sorry. Yeah. What was it?
Correct. That's what I'm trying to break into.
Okay.
Yeah, over time. I mean, it's easy to do it on, and well, first of all, nothing's easy to do in trading, but it's easier to do a 2 to 1 or a 3 to 1 or a 4 to 1 or a 10 to 1 on a single trade or in a single day. But when you combine multiple months, and this is going back to September 1st of 2021 to March of 2022, having a risk reward overall of 1.3 to 1 and a win rate of 59.5%. That was a lot of work to maintain those numbers. And I'm trying to pick them both up so that I even have a higher win rate and an even higher risk reward profit factor. And that's going to happen by making those micro adjustments and holding my size more to target, things like that. So
Awesome. All right, guys. So if you've not seen the original interview, go watch that. It's a lot older, so that's Frozen really started to find his edge, and between that interview and this one, he's come a long way. And if you want to connect with him more, go watch his channel, go subscribe to him, come into the Discord. We're both there, and ask questions, and he'll answer them. He better answer them, otherwise he's fired. I'm just kidding. He just does whatever he wants there. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you want to see more of these interviews with Frozen, and if you like this, me not just talking to myself type shit. Anyways, have a good one.
you too, Fat Cat.